Welcome back, guys. Welcome to my channel. This video is carrying on from during the series of AQA A-Level Psychology Paper 1, and this time we will be looking at the memory module. Like always, I would love if you guys liked and subscribed, and obviously comment down below with any questions you have. I'm always really happy to help, so if you guys have any questions about specific questions that you come across whilst revising or learning this module, then feel free to just comment below and I will help as much as I can. So firstly, we'll be looking at Atkinson and Shiffrin's multi-store model. So firstly, I'm just going to explain sort of coding and capacity and duration. So coding is a way that the information is actually changed so it can be stored into memory. And there are three types. There's semantic, which is looking at the meaning of the information, focuses on the meaning of the situation, such as so that would sort of be like a memory that you have of something. And then acoustic, which is obviously the sound of some sound during the memory. And then visual, which is obviously what you see. And then going on to the multi-store model, you have the sensory register, which holds information gained by the senses, which, for example, is the eyes, ears, mouth, nose, touch. The capacity of this is very, very large. It can hold a lot of information because obviously with so many sensors they're all gaining information all the time. Coding, again, is any type because this covers every single sort of sense, so they all receive information in different ways, but it is only held for a few milliseconds. So obviously once a smell goes away, you can't really smell it anymore, can you? And then to move this into the short-term memory, you need to just pay attention to it. So the short-term memory stores immediate events, so things that happened relatively recently, has a capacity of 7 plus or minus 2, so that's sort of 5 to 9 items at a time, as found by Miller. And then coding tends to be more acoustic, as found by Baddeley. And the duration is about 18 seconds, as found by Peterson and Peterson. I assume you'll probably have more details about these studies in your textbook, but if not, feel free to comment down below and I will give you more detail on it, or you just search it up online. And then to move this into the long-term memory, you need to do maintenance rehearsal, and then maintenance rehearsal can also take short-term memory and sort of just keep refreshing it in that section of the memory, and then obviously to remove it from there, you just retrieve it. So looking on the long-term memory, this is past events that took place a while ago. And the capacity is unlimited. So obviously you can hold as much information in your long-term memory as you want. And this is coded semantically, so you're obviously more likely to remember things that actually have a meaning to them. And then similar to the duration, this is unlimited as well. And then obviously to get the long-term memory back to the short-term memory, again it is the process of retrieval. So in terms of the evaluation of Atkinson and Shiffrin's work, there is the case study of HM, who underwent surgery for epilepsy by removing a portion of his temporal lobe. But after the surgery, they discovered that he couldn't remember the past 11 years before the surgery, and failed to make new memories also. However, it is oversimplistic, and long-term memory requires much more than rehearsal. Otherwise, it would be so easy we would literally remember everything that we learned if it required just the basic rehearsal. In terms of types of long-term memory, you've got episodic, procedural, and semantic. So episodic is personal memories of events, so contextual details, and tend to have an emotional tone. So, for example, if you attend a wedding, for each individual that creates an episodic memory because everyone will remember it in a slightly different way. Procedural is just the memory of how to do things and tends to be automatic due to repeated practice. So it's also been found that even when people have brain damage, they still are able to keep some procedural memories, such as making a cup of tea or riding a bike and things, but they can't remember how they're doing it, they just are able to do it. And then semantic is just shared memories of facts of knowledge. So basically, for example, Paris is the capital of France. And then support for these is brain scans, because when it's been found when people remember different types of memories, it lights up slightly different areas of the brain. However, it is hard to distinguish between episodic and semantic, because obviously they're both sort of shared things. And then long term may not be exclusively coded like this. Looking at the working memory model by Baddeley and Hitch, it starts off with the central executive, which is the main hub of memory, which monitors and coordinates all mental functions in the working memory. And I will mention the working memory model focuses on purely short-term memory. So you've got the phonological loop, which codes speech sounds, involves maintenance rehearsal, and then has two parts: the phonological store, which is basically the inner ear, and the articulatory process, which is the inner voice. And then on the other side of that, you've got the visuospatial sketchpad, which codes visually, looks at items separately as well as a visual field, and then you've got the visual cache, which stores information, and then the inner scribe notes down the spatial relationship between the items that you see. So this will actually help you piece together everything that you see and create a space. And then the episodic buffer, which is in the middle, receives input from both the phonological loop and the visuospatial sketchpad, and is the temporary store for this information before moving it to long-term memory, which obviously, going by the previous model that we just looked at, that is through the process of rehearsal, and then adding all the information together constructs the mental episode of what is being experienced. And obviously, in terms of the evaluation, there are positives and negatives to looking at brain damage patients, because obviously they're useful for actually showing that different areas of the brain have different jobs and roles. However, obviously, being brain damaged patients, they do not apply to everyone. So obviously, certain things that we'll look at later, such as plasticity, like their brains may change depending on the damage that's taken place. This does explain dual task points, because obviously the speech and the visual side of things are kept separate, which means they're able to work individually together. However, the central executive is too simple in this model, because obviously it's such a key part of the short-term memory, yet there's really not much to it, which just seems a bit odd. So in terms of explanations for forgetting, you've got the interference theory. So you've got retroactive interference, which is when current attempts to learn something new interfere with past learning. So for example, a new iOS being released onto iPhones make you forget how to use older iOS, and you may not feel as comfortable using older iOS when the new iOS has been introduced. And then contrary to that, you've got the proactive interference. So when past learning interferes with current attempts to learning something. So, for example, when you start putting your car keys into a new place in your house, you often find that you return to the old location that they were previously at. And then some research support for this is Baddeley and Hitch asked rugby players to recall who they had played against in the current season, and found that those who had played less games were better at recalling, which is evidence for both retroactive and proactive interference, because obviously people may lose focus of information if it's being replaced by new. So it is sort of more, I think it would be more retroactive. So but obviously this doesn't explain all forgetting, and there is the debate between whether it's accessibility versus availability. So maybe the information is actually there, but you're just not able to access it, or is it actually just not available to the individual? Another explanation for forgetting is retrieval failure. So you've got the encoding specifity principle, which suggests our memory is most effective if information present at the time of encoding is present when retrieving. And Tulving and Pearlstone gave participants 48 words from 12 categories, and found that the free recall, so there was no cues or anything, was 40%, but when given a cue to recall the words, it was 60%. So obviously, in terms of the evaluation, this could apply to exams, because obviously you learn the information in the classroom, but then you go into a separate exam hall to take the exams at the end of the year. So maybe students would actually achieve better if they were in the classroom setting that they learnt it. So then you've got context dependent. So obviously this is similar to the exams situation that I just mentioned. Godden and Baddeley got scuba divers to learn words either on land or underwater, and then they were asked to recall the information either in the same environment as before or different. So, for example, if they learnt the words on land, they would either be asked to recall on land or underwater. And the recall was best when the information was learnt and recalled in the same environment. And then state dependent. This is a very popular study because it's a bit wacky, so to speak. So Goodwin et al. Got a group of males to learn a list of words whilst either drunk or sober, and 24 hours later they were asked to recall the words in the same or different state, and found that recall was best when learnt and recalled in the same state. So obviously someone would have recalled better even if they were drunk both times than if they were drunk when learning and then sober when recalling. However, cues don't always work if the information is not processed properly. Factors affecting the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. So you've got leading questions. So these are questions that either by form or content suggest to the witness what answer is desired or leads them to the desired answer. For example, by saying, "Was the criminal wearing a black jacket?" an individual might not necessarily remember whether they were wearing a black jacket or not, but because the question would assume that they did, so would say yes. And again, with "did they have brown hair?" you may not have noticed, but because of this question, you might think they already have an individual in mind they want to prosecute for the crime, so you would say yes, they have brown hair, or no, depending on how you would see it. Post-event discussion, which is a conversation between co-witnesses or an interviewer and witness after a crime takes place. And obviously this is an issue when it comes to the accuracy of eyewitness testimony, because they all tend to exchange details and may get confused about what really happened, because obviously they would have seen the event from two different perspectives and would have noticed things that the other didn't. And then obviously anxiety, which is something that obviously people cannot help in a scary situation, but is basically an unpleasant emotional state, often accompanied by symptoms such as increased heart rate and rapid breathing. So there is research support for this. I cannot remember the name of the participants who did it, of the researchers who did it, sorry, but the participants were asked which Disney character they preferred, Bugs Bunny or Ariel, bearing in mind that Bugs Bunny was not Disney, and people actually did say Bugs Bunny for some of the time. So that is a leading question, because obviously they would assume that Bugs Bunny was a Disney character. However, it is difficult to study as the crime has to take place, or it can be recreated for the research purposes, but obviously then this raises ethical issues. So looking deeper into leading questions, so you've got Loftus and Palmer 1974, who did 2 studies. The first one looked at 45 students who were shown 7 clips of different car accidents. After each clip, they were given a questionnaire with a critical question in it, which was how fast were the cars travelling when they each other. And obviously that blank space, or that horrible noise that I just made, was replaced with 5 verbs, either hit, smashed, collided, bumped, or contacted. And those were the verbs smashed in there, so they saw the question, how fast were the cars travelling when they smashed each other, gave the higher speed, whereas those who had the word contacted gave the lower speed. So obviously putting this verb in here changed how people perceived the accident that just took place. And then for their second study, a new group of participants were split into 3 groups, and each shown a 1-minute clip of a car accident. A week later, they were asked if they saw broken glass when the cars smashed, or hit. So again, it's similar to the first study where they're either given different verbs for the question. And then people with the word smashed gave the highest percentage of saying they saw glass, although there was actually no broken glass in the video. Looking more at anxiety, Johnson and Scott created a study where participants were sat in a waiting room, listening to an argument in an adjoining room. So one of the men leaves the room either holding a greasy pen, which is the low anxiety condition, or a bloody knife, which was the high anxiety condition. With the pen, there was 49% accurate descriptions of the man walking through. However, with the knife, 33% only accurately described him, which obviously issues this ecological validity, like would this actually happen in everyday life? Individual differences, obviously people might not be as anxious with a bloody knife as others. There's obviously ethical issues, like obviously the participants would not be aware that this would be taking place, because obviously then that would skew the results. So there are issues with ethical ideas there. In terms of improving the accuracy of eyewitness testimony, you've got the cognitive interview, which is a police technique for interviewing witnesses, encouraging them to recreate the original context of the crime to increase the accessibility of stored information, because obviously in a scary situation many people will tend to deny the information. Their subconscious will hide the information from them. So obviously 4 ways that the cognitive interview tries to bring this information forward and make it more accessible is the mental reinstatement, which is recreating the physical and psychological environment of the crime. Individuals are asked to report everything, because any information could be important, even if it is just, oh, he had dirty shoes on or something. They are asked to change the order of the event, because obviously it may help them pick out new bits of information, and to change perspectives. So even if they were to recall from other points of view, such as the actual criminal who committed the crime, or from the perspective of another individual, another witness. So obviously this has real world application. This is used all the time in crimes, in prosecution processes. But obviously the information should really be more of a good quality, rather than actually just because a individual may feel they need to just get a load of information out that they might not be totally sure about things. So this is a fairly short video today, guys. That is the memory section complete. It's fairly simple, there's not much to it, but obviously if you do have any queries or concerns or anything, feel free to comment down below and I will try and answer as quickly as possible. And I will see you soon for the next video, which I believe is the psychopathology one. Thanks, guys.